Welcome to SPINEMA TV, where we wax nostalgic about classics from the 80s and 90s. I'm Bregman of Nerds Like Us, and alongside me is
Nikki Steele.
And we're here to talk about one of 1996's best films, a film that definitely stands the test of time. It is Wes Craven's horror classic, Scream. We're going to start off with our Fantastic Four, the funky, fresh film facts about this awesome classic.
Number 1 is killer cameos. Wes Craven actually appears twice in the film. First, as the janitor, he donned the iconic Krueger hat and sweater inside the school. It's actually referred to as Fred. Second, he gets walked on by Barrymore. He donned Ghostface as she tried to get away. Third, we've got Linda Blair from The Exorcist, who was actually outside the school and accosted Sidney in the cop car.
Number 2, title twist. The original working title for this film was actually Scary Movie, which we all know became the title of the spoof series following this franchise. One day in his car, screenwriter Kevin Williamson was listening to Michael Jackson's hit of that era, Scream, and decided to retitle his film with the same name.
Number 3, we have Phenomenon. Get it? Phenomenon? Yeah. This movie also inspired mass use of caller ID.
Now we've got number 4, Getting Nailed. Rose McGowan plays Tatum and has what I think is one of the most epic deaths in the history of cinema, where you see her essentially get taken apart using a garage door that she's caught in. Now, she's trying to fit through a doggy door, and McGowan was so slim that every time they would raise the garage door, she would just slide right out the back of it. They ended up having to actually hammer and nail her shirt into that garage door so that she could be taken up and down with it in order to accomplish that scene.
I would get stuck. Number 5, we have Horror Homage. The movie Scream was actually based on real events down in Gainesville, Florida back in the 90s, early 90s, 1990 to be exact. He was nicknamed the Gainesville Ripper.
And that brings us to Real Feels. Now, I want to talk about what it was like when Scream first came out, how it impacted you. What was your first experience with this movie? What were you doing in 1996?
I was in 6th grade.
You're a pretty self-proclaimed horror fan. What did Scream do for you?
It changed my life from the aspect of so many people. For me, being at that age, people died, and it was just, you didn't know who was going to die next. And you thought it was a killer, you thought it was Cotton, and then it wasn't Cotton, and then it just became this whodunit.
To me, Scream was an absolute genre changer. So I was a big fan of horror films as well. And actually, in '96, I believe I had a job working at a video store, Hollywood Video, if anyone remembers the red bow ties and cummerbunds. I loved watching all manner of terrible horror films. And what I loved about Scream was how it took all of those tropes, kind of made fun of them, but at the same time advanced them several years of filmmaking. And I feel like the horror genre was completely catapulted by Scream, and how Scream bisected many different fandoms, and it added that comedy element that you didn't really have in old horror films, and it was a really well-made movie, so it took away the camp of those 80s films, because they were bad movies, they were B films, right? And so I really feel like we never would have had the, Saws and Mother's Day and all this other these horror films that are made today if we didn't have Scream.
It also called out what we had seen from previous slasher flicks, which was the rules of movies. And it was a movie within a movie, kind of, so to speak. Don't have sex, don't do drugs, all things, basically all the leading scenes from Crystal Lake, etc. And it was don't do these things, but at the same time, you still had those things happen, and you had the geek, which, he survived, actually, the first one, which is rare.
Funny you mentioned it. I think that the cast is one of, it's one of the first that I can remember really great ensemble cast movies without really like a lead star per se. Like, everyone's fairly equally important to the film, and there's a lot of like kind of rising stars. Speaking of that amazing ensemble cast, let's go ahead and hit SPINEMA Reboot. This is where we talk about who we would use if we were filming the movie today, whether it was a reboot or the first time, who's gonna play these key characters that really make the film. Let's go ahead and start off with the character of Casey, originally played by Drew Barrymore. Now, In this one, I really see using the name of a person that's hot in Hollywood at the time, who's not really in the film. I mean, spoiler alert, she's dead after 5 minutes. But who kind of is a big name in Hollywood? Maybe this isn't their kind of film, and you could cast them today. They're in it 5 minutes, 3 days of shooting, they're out.
If I had to choose someone with that star power who does die in the first, I think give her 15 minutes. You know, the jiffy pop and everything. Right. She runs around. She's got to close all the doors. She's got to make some phone calls. You know, and then she bites it. I think Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer looks great as a blonde. What about Sydney, originally played by Neve Campbell?
I think possibly Emma Watson would be really, really good as Sydney.
Oh, not bad. I mean, definitely an amazing talent. I might also go Zooey Deschanel. I feel like she's got that girl next door cuteness, innocence maybe, but I also, if you follow Sydney's story arc, Sydney hits a breaking point where she almost becomes psychotic herself. Like, she's just been tormented by Ghostface, and she's just ready to kill people. And I could certainly see Zooey Deschanel really making that twist into Crazy Town.
Bangs or no bangs?
Either or. I could take it. Bangs give her that kind of innocent look. What about her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, originally played by the poor man's Johnny Depp, Skeet Ulrich?
Think Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Ooh, Quicksilver from Age of Ultron, or Kick-Ass, if you will. He can do that greasy, dirty.
We gotta grease him up.
What about his best buddy, Stu, originally played by the zany Matthew Lillard?
Shia LaBeouf. Crazy Town. All the way, I want him.
Could certainly play crazy. You'd be maybe a little afraid he might method act that thing and actually kill some people. I might actually go with Evan Peters, Quicksilver from Days of Future Past. I think could also play Stu really well. He's got a kind of a weird, physically awkward, weird quirkiness to him that I think Matthew Lillard had. And I just want to see a time paradox by having both Quicksilvers in the same time after they were Quicksilver. It didn't count when they were in Kick-Ass. What do you think about the character of Randy, originally played by Jamie Kennedy, well before he really blew up, but my personal favorite character in this film?
I think Dylan O'Brien. I think he was in Teen Wolf, and he played that best friend, fast talking, you know, very knowledgeable, kind of nerdy. I think he would do well with that. What about you?
Another person that I think banters well, and really plays great emotional peril. And I think that that's really important to Randy's character, is that he cares about everyone that's going on, but it's kind of meta because he knows he's kind of in a horror movie. He's like breaking the 3.5 wall. And I think Grant Gustin of CW's The Flash would actually be really good at playing Randy. What about Tatum, originally played by Rose McGowan?
Let's see. I think Kat Dennings.
Sure, definitely. I mean, she kind of looks just like Rose McGowan.
But I also think Emma Stone.
That I think that'd be fantastic. Emma Stone would absolutely be great at that. What about Gale Weathers, originally played by Courtney Cox, the intrepid reporter?
Aisha Tyler, hands down.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, and you know, in today's Hollywood, you definitely need to kind of add some diversity and unwhitewash maybe that era that some of these films that we love were made in. What about the love interest for Gale in Dewey, originally played by David Arquette? And you got kind of this Dudley Do-Right, kind of aw shucks, you know, good guy that wants to save the day. What do you think about that?
You mean like Paul Blart Mall Cop?
No, you are not casting Kevin
James!
No.
Kevin James is Dewey.
If you're gonna make a real Hollywood movie today, you need a Hemsworth. I think this is a perfect spot to drop Liam Hemsworth in there. He plays a little bit goofy. I think Chris is too pretty for the role. But you drop a Hemsworth in, he saves the day, he's the cop, it's good, it's fine. What about Cotton, originally played by Liev Schreiber, and kind of, he's that, you know, he just looks like he did it.
I think for Cotton, Cillian Murphy, and then possibly Jake Busey.
Ooh, Jake Busey's good.
Yeah.
He looks like he's guilty of whatever crime he's being accused of. With the cast in place, we're gonna update this movie a little bit. What are some elements of modern day that you see fitting into the storyline of Scream?
Well, obviously social media is the biggest one. Definitely social media, Facebook statuses, you know, and the filming, the cell phones. People would be out with their cell phones, most likely not helping anybody who was possibly murdered by somebody.
So like Ghostface is dropping the dagger on somebody and they're sitting there taking a selfie with the Ghostface in the background, like, look what's happening behind me, what up? Oh God, can you imagine Sydney's time hop in a few years? Like every time it comes back to either Scream 1, Scream 2, like friends of hers are dying, like sharing those memories. You know, I was just thinking, we could actually play a really fun drinking game with this movie. Let's call it Slash Shots, and it's the Scream drinking game. You take a shot every time you hear a reference to a previously made horror film. Every time a character name, a place name, the type of killing.
Nightmare on Elm Street is mentioned. You'll be lit.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been SPINEMA. I'm Bernie Bregman of Nerds Like Us.
And I'm Nikki Steele.
And that's our spin on it.